45 years ago, we were on our way to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we ran out of fuel over Mississippi and crashed. When Lynyrd Skynyrd's plane fell from the sky, Artimus Pyle crawled through fire to survive. But decades later, the real shock wasn't the crash, it was what he did next. This is the story they tried to bury. Artimus Pyle never tried to be a star. He just wanted to keep the beats steady and strong behind the roar of Lynyrd Skynyrd's guitars and the wail of Ronnie Vance's voice. His drums were thunder, but his life was silence until tragedy made him a symbol. He grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, a kid with more fire than money, banging on makeshift drum kits in the basement while his dad, a Marine pilot, inspired him to believe in honor and survival. By the time Artimus joined Skynyrd in the mid-70s, the band was already writing its name into rock history. Freebird wasn't just a song, it was an anthem for every rebellious kid who wanted to taste the sky. And Artimus, with his untamed hair and steady arms, kept that song alive every night on tour, pounding the skins like he was born with drumsticks instead of bones. But everything changed on October 20th, 1977. It should have been just another ride. They've done it 1,000 times. The band's Convy CV-240 took off from Greenville, South Carolina, headed for Baton Rouge. What happened next turned into one of rock's darkest moments. The plane sputtered, fuel tanks empty, and fell from the sky like a wounded bird. When the wreckage slammed into the Mississippi woods, 6 people died, including Ronnie Vance's and Steve Gaines. Artimus survived, but survival didn't mean safety. He crawled from the wreckage, broken ribs, grinding with every breath, bleeding, delirious, stumbling barefoot through thorns and darkness to find help. He flagged down a farmer's house, but instead of rescue, he was met with a shotgun. The farmer, terrified and confused, fired a warning shot over Artimus's head, convinced the bloodied stranger was a threat. That night haunted Artimus forever. He walked away with a legacy and a lifetime of scars, both inside and out. For decades, he was the plane crash survivor, the man who kept Lynyrd Skynyrd's flame alive in tribute bands and in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the truth is that survival can twist you up inside. The crash didn't just break his bones, it broke his trust, his friendships, and eventually his reputation. After Skynyrd regrouped in the 1980s, Artimus kept playing, but he never felt fully accepted again. Legal battles with the remaining members, bitter disputes over royalties and accusations that he was exploiting the band's tragedy, drove deep wedges between him and the rest of Skynyrd's legacy machine. Then decades later, something darker emerged. In the early 1990s, allegations of sexual misconduct rocked Artimus's name. Arrested, charged, headlines screaming that the plane crash hero was now a suspect of something unimaginable. He maintained his innocence from day one, claiming it was a smear campaign to keep him away from the Skynyrd brand. But the damage was done. Fans who'd seen him as the scrappy survivor didn't know what to believe. Some stood by him, pointing to the lack of hard evidence, the conflicting statements, the fact that Artimus had always been outspoken against the way the Skynyrd business was run. Others walked away, not wanting to wrestle with the idea that the man who survived that night in 1977 might have become something darker. The legal battles dragged on for years. In 1993, he pleaded guilty to lesser charges, but even then he claimed it was just to make it stop, to avoid bankruptcy and protect his family. He never served hard time, but the stain never washed away either. Artimus tried to rebuild, forming the Artimus Pyle Band and performing the Skynyrd hits he helped make immortal. He told his side of the story again and again, that he was railroaded, that the real criminals were the ones who controlled Skynyrd's name and money, while claiming to honor the dead. He sued to make a movie about the plane crash, only to face court injunctions from surviving bandmates and families who said he had no right to tell that story. They called him a liar. He called himself the last honest witness. Through it all, he stayed on the road, battered drumsticks, battered spirit, but the same defiance that made him crawl through the Mississippi woods all those years ago. Fans who meet him today describe him as warm, talkative, and endlessly willing to relive the night that nearly killed him. He signs autographs, smiles for photos, but you can see the toll in his eyes, a thousand-eye stare that never quite fades, the look of a man who carries ghosts, and those ghosts don't just haunt him, they divide his legacy. To some, Artimus Pyle is still the true keeper of Skynyrd's rebel soul, a drummer who refused to sell out, who kept the old songs alive on his own terms. To others, he's the man who turned survival into controversy, who dragged the band's sacred story through courtrooms and tabloid headlines. And in the end, the mystery isn't about what happened on that plane. It's about what survival does to a man when the world keeps pulling him back into the past. Artimus Pyle didn't die in that swamp, but a part of him did. The kid who just wanted to play drums behind a band of brothers became the man alone on stage, pounding out the same songs while the people he loved the most vanished one by one. He says he dreams about Ronnie Van Zant. Sometimes they're back on the plane, laughing, young, invincible. And then he wakes up, every bone aching, the roar of Free Bird echoing in his mind like a prayer he can't stop repeating. The truth is, the Artimus Pyle mystery is no mystery at all. It's a tragedy in slow motion. The hero became the villain. The outcast stayed an outcast, and the beat goes on. One snare hit after another, until the last note fades, and the final secret, whatever it is, dies with him.